Hi everyone, Magnus here, and today's video we've got some more live explained rapid chess, playing a 1400 from Morocco. Opened up the rating settings a little bit because it was taking way too long to try and find someone within 400 points. So also I thought it might be useful to some of you guys that might have some opponents closer to 1400 rating, and we can try and play some openings that I recommend and see how they pair up, and maybe you guys can take some of the tricks and traps that there might be in these systems and try them out in your own games and see how it goes. So I started with e4, king's pawn. They go for a Sicilian. Pawn to d4 and d5 is standard stuff. They like to, not the Sicilian, the Caro-Kann. And they like to fight for the center here. They do lash out with this move, pawn to c5. I like to take this pawn here. I know that there's some modern theory with knight to f3, but I prefer, I think a pawn is a pawn, and I like to try and hang on to them, a little bit of a pawn grubber. They attack my center pawn. I'm going to defend it with my knight, and on them moving out their bishop, which they don't go for, there is this tricky move pawn to c3, which we have had in a previous game. I believe it was day 2 of the Road to 2400 series. As you can see, we're now trying to get to 2500. So okay, they've opened up their bishop attacking this pawn here. I like this move, pawn to a3, trying to go b4, and if they take this pawn, I will go pawn to b4. My arrows are really off at the moment. I'll go pawn to b4, and then after their bishop goes back to, say, b6, I can play bishop to b2, and we're actually transposing into one of the main lines in this opening. If you don't play knight c6 first and instead play e6 straight away, we've now got a very similar position where I'm going to get my two bishops lasering down the board here, and they can become very, very dangerous pieces indeed. Okay, so I'm getting my other bishop to this active d3 square. It doesn't really want to go to e2, doesn't have many prospects. d3 is good. b5 is useless because you don't want to trade for this knight here, even though it is pin. So d3 is the optimal square in this Caro-Kann setup, and in actually a lot of Caro-Kann setups, the bishop is a fantastic piece on d3 because when they have this pawn chain here, your bishop can easily eye this pawn, which is why the bishop's not so good on c4, because in the Caro-Kann you like to build up this light squared central blockade. Okay, after castles, I actually think castles is a mistake, and you may be familiar with this Greek gift sacrifice idea. When there's a pawn on e5, you can often go for bishop takes h7. So let's try and have a quick calculation at this. Because when the pawn's on e5, it's controlling the f6 square. So after I sack the bishop on h7 and the king takes, knight to g5, and the king moves up, the king doesn't have the f6 square to run away to. So let's take a quick look. Bishop takes h7, king takes, knight g5. If the king goes here or here, simple queen h5, and checkmate is unstoppable on h7. f6, the knight still covers f7. So bishop takes h7, king takes h7, knight g5. Pretty much only move is this, unless you want to go for king h6, which could be a potential interesting move. Maybe king h6 is playable. But then queen g4, and I guess this move is coming. It's gonna get complicated. But my intuition's telling me that this bishop can always come back to c1 and rejoin the attack this way. And I think this is probably sound, given that all of the black pieces that want to be defending the king are on the queen side and kind of out of the game. So let's get our knight into the attack. So if the king moves up, I could go for queen to d3, sacking the knight maybe, and then bishop c1. And then let's say king h4, g4, king takes g4. My rook would get into the game and that would be a win. I actually had a puzzle like this a little bit earlier on today. And let's say if king to d3, queen to d3, pawn to f5. If knight goes to f5, I guess the knight could go to f5 as well. That could be a little bit annoying. So maybe queen g4 is the way to go after king to g6. Trying to set up all kinds of discoveries here. I think queen g4 has to be the move, because simple knight e6 looks pretty devastating, and if you like move the queen out of the way, the king doesn't really have any other squares, so to me, king g6 and queen g4 would be a game over, and it's very nice that this e-pawn is supported by the bishop, because if it wasn't, after queen g4, the knight could take, and that would disrupt the queen's ability to do discoveries, because they would take my queen. So I guess the only move looks like king to h6 here. Even then, though, queen g4 looks strong, but let's say knight g6. Now what? That's the question. So maybe it's something like queen d2. Maybe. Setting up more discoveries on the king, but then maybe king g6. They might be weaseling out, and we don't want that. So here, knight g6 is what I was saying. Then there's bishop c1. And so let's say queen g4, knight g6, bishop c1, knight takes, there is knight takes e6, delivering a check to the king. And when the king moves back, say here, then what? Then it's check, king moves back here, and the two knights are kind of tangled up, and I don't see how they can stop queen h7 checkmate. I guess you can sack the queen for the knight here, and maybe try to survive. Okay, that's interesting. What about bishop c1 right away? Because bishop c1 on knight takes e5 here, we have got knight takes f7. That wins a queen, so that's probably quite good. But on bishop c1, there's king g6, and then on this move, you can take. It's getting very, very crazy. I think I got to go queen g4 right away, because that pretty much forces this move. I don't see any other move. Maybe knight to f5 is an alternative. But on knight f5, bishop c1, knight takes e5, there's knight e6, and on king h7, the knight on f5 guards the checkmate. Oh dear. Have I gone wrong? Maybe. Maybe. Here. What about this? Here. I can just win a queen, I guess. Bishop c1's got to be the move. Lining up with the king. And yeah, I don't really see any other approach other than knight takes here. It would actually have been probably better if my bishop was always on c1, because then they wouldn't have had the option of king h6, because there would have been discovery. So it's a little bit annoying this bishop had to move back and forth here. But yeah, knight takes e5, knight e6, or knight f7. Knight f7 is more forcing, so I like it. King h7, check, here, takes. Should be better. I'm not completely winning, because there's actually two pieces for the queen there. So it's still like a little bit of conversion. For that reason, I actually don't like knight takes e6 as much, because it will open up the diagonal for this bishop, which I'd rather keep locked in behind these two pawns here. So for that reason, I do prefer knight takes f7. That, and it's a double check, which is always nice. So yeah, I like knight takes f7, because it's completely forcing this move here, check, and taking the queen. So, unless I'm missing something, is there knight e6 maybe? Here. I don't see it. Actually, knight e6 there. Wait, but on knight e6, it is possible that you can play like bishop e3 or something crazy. But on bishop e3, there's captures, and on knight takes, there's takes, and then mate. So maybe a knight e6 is worth looking at. Knight e6 is interesting, actually. Maybe g5, but then bishop takes g5, king g6, knight f4 here. Seems unnecessarily complicated. Yeah, g5 seems to get things crazy. Because what I was looking at initially that made me like it is that after this, I can take on f5. But then again, after something like g6 here, I wouldn't be threatening to take the queen. So probably I should just go for the simple option with the double check and deliver the other check with my queen, take their queen, and just enjoy. Okay. Check, getting out of trouble, but not queen h3, by the way, because then there would be queen h4 and I would look like a fool. Okay. Still have a game to play though. It's not like it's over. We have one material. The attack doesn't have to end in checkmate, and oftentimes the Greek gift sacrifice doesn't actually end in checkmate. But let's grab the queen here. Their knight is now hanging. This pawn is also hanging, which is definitely interesting. But if they take it, I'll just slide over. It's not a big deal. And if they take it with the rook, then that's not a check, and I can just take your knight in between, and you wouldn't even be threatening to take my knight because your rook would be loose. So we'll have to try and see what they come up with. Probably something with bishop takes, but on bishop takes, I actually think it's a little bit risky because after I move my king over, now your knight's hanging, and my knight is, I guess it's still kind of under threat. But what I'm saying is that rook f1 is going to come pretty quick, and that can be a bit annoying, especially when this bishop is going to line up as well. Okay. So the simplest might even just be something like here. That might kill the game pretty quick. Let's eliminate this this knight on h6. And let's eliminate the knight in the center. Bring a rook in, and should be delivering a checkmate fairly quickly, or just get resignation. Okay, good game to my opponent. They put up a pretty good fight. Let's get into the analysis. Let's see if the sacrifice was sound. I'm not sure that it was. Okay, yeah, so this is all apparently theory. Didn't really know that at the time. This is still theory. Wow. And bishop takes is completely unsound. That's pretty sad. So b5 is the best move. And now bishop takes is good. That's weird. What's the difference? f5 en passant. This is pretty normal. Wow, apparently bishop takes f2 is now the only move. Crazy stuff. And king to d1 only move. Wow, what is this? This is insane. And the engine is just sitting there on the sidelines saying, yeah, probably about 0.3, hovering around equal. And now it gives pawn to e5, counter-attacking the queen, only move. Point of bishop takes f2 was to stop the queen going to g3. Now knight to e6 check, intercepting. Oh my goodness, intercepting the bishop, delivering a check. King takes f6, only move. What on earth is this? Now bishop takes e5, only move. Oh wow. I can't even pretend to know what exactly is going on. Now after king takes, it's queen e2 only move. My goodness. King moves. Now you take the queen. For some reason, you don't take back the knight. You play, oh, I guess the bishop's under threat. You play bishop d4, attacking the rook. You ignore the hanging rook. You play rook to e1, counter-attacking the knight. This is the only way to play it. Knight f5. I don't even know what this line is. This is like an entire string of only moves. That's crazy. And this is all coming after pawn to d5. Like, that's just madness. And apparently, okay, so in this one, king g6 was the only way to play. But I thought that queen g4 looked dangerous. f5 is apparently the defensive move, though. Because I saw, like, yeah, if you can't take... So you have to go f5. And on en passant, it's pawn to e5, knight e6, king f6, and this guy gets pinned. Wow, okay, that's pretty interesting. So I guess that this is an unsound way to do the Greek gift. Generally, you're better off once you've castled and you also have a rook on the e file. That's also a useful indicator of the Greek gift. But, I mean, either way, it's still interesting to get this kind of sacrifice, and it worked out in the end. Apparently, pawn to f4 was slightly better than bishop to c1, but they're pretty close. Bishop c1's the second move, trying to go for this. And everything is losing apparently, other than bishop takes on f2 and queen b6. For some unknown reason, this is helpful. Oh, because now after king g6, the queen's no longer in harm's way, even though you're still losing a rook. I don't know. This looks like total chaos, complete mess. They go for the more natural looking move, and knight takes f7 is the only way to go, which is good to know. I wonder if it was correct that this, yeah, g5 is the only response. I knew it, g5, and it just gets crazy. I'm quite happy to have at least spotted this move. Because yeah, after bishop takes g5 and king g6 was what I was pointing out. Just utter madness. The queen is hanging, their queen is hanging multiple times. Like, this is just totally ridiculous. Totally insane. Oh my goodness. Yeah, these attacking games are always really fun. Queen h5 takes, and the rest was apparently, yeah, the rest was good. Okay, so just totally crazy game there. I mean, 1400s these days are clearly built a bit different than they used to be, at least as far as I can tell. I think my opponent actually played a really interesting game, and yeah, it's definitely some really cool stuff beneath the surface there. So if you guys did enjoy this video, find it interesting, please do feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.